Welcome everyone to this Knowledge Rights 21 webinar introducing the ISDL Insight report, talking about digital lending pathways in Italy, Poland and Spain. I will shortly be handing over to project, but just as on behalf of Knowledge Rights 21 as a whole, my name is Stephen Wyber. I just wanted to underline that this is a fantastic example of a report that really goes in the direction that our program, our initiative as a whole is taking, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We can talk about more about that at the end. In that it's really crucially focused on not just the key legal insights, the sort of ideas that we can get by looking at laws, understanding them, evaluating them, but also some of the practicalities that mean that legal something that improves the service, improves the possibilities that libraries have on the ground to make a difference. It can often seem in discussions around copyright, and especially around AI at the moment, that everything is just about copyright in one way or the other. And this is a great way, this report is a fantastic way of demonstrating that, yes, copyright plays a key role, but so too does building capacity, changing attitudes, offering skills and so on, that actually really ensuring that we are giving access to research, education and culture in a digital age needs to be a much more holistic, fuller effort. And this report really provides a snapshot in the case of independent secure digital lending, which Konrad will be describing, will be defining for us shortly. It's a really fantastic example of that at work that I think provides a really good model. I'm going to hand over to Deborah to introduce the report itself and the team who will be talking about it.
Thank you, Stephen. Good afternoon, everyone. We are really pleased to announce the completion of the Independent Secure Digital Lending Insight Digital Lending Pathways in Italy, Poland, and Spain. Comparative project by Knowledge 21, funded by Arcadia Family Charitable Foundation through the Knowledge Right 21 program, managed by IFLA in partnership with Wyber and Spark Europe. I had the pleasure to coordinate in this project, and I want to warmly thank KR21 and in particular Stephen Wyber for his invaluable support, along with the amazing teams from the Copyright Law and Access to Knowledge Policy Group in Italy, Centrum Cyfrowe in Poland, and FESABID in Spain for their valuable collaboration. And last, but certainly not least, a massive thanks to all the libraries across the 3 countries for their effective contribution to our project. The project examines the factors and barriers that affect the full implementation of the independent, secure digital lending model. And it serves as, I would say, a starting point for developing overcome challenges. The independent sector digital lending ultimate goal is to empower libraries to truly function as libraries in the digital age, to digitize and digitally lend books under the condition established by the European Court of Justice. The methodology of the project, through a comprehensive survey investigating the various kind of obstacles the libraries face in the 3 countries, ISDL examined the current status and perspective of secure digital lending, the lending, as I said, of digitized print works with technological protection measure as DRM. The project stems from the opportunity to conduct further research building on the previous study, e-book and secure digital lending in European libraries, comparative analysis under national and international law. And this study was carried out by Centrum Cyfrowe, for KR21, aiming at enabling libraries to implement the independent secure digital model. So I leave the floor to Konrad, which briefly introduce us into the independent secure digital lending definition. Thank you, Konrad.
Thank you, Deborah. So I will try to be as brief and concise as possible because the whole report, as Stephen mentioned, is available and you can read it in detail. So I just want to stress some basic element when it comes to this concept of independent digital lending. In general, our report had two important question in mind. So first of all, we try to figure it out if this particular model of e-lending is allowed by the European law, European and international law, but also we've tried to assess from our perspective, is it possible to implement this model based on national law of 22 European countries. And in our report, you will find both the analysis from the European law perspective, international law perspective, and also this kind of rough estimation for some of the European countries, 22 European countries. In general, of course, when we're talking about the e-lending, you can have in mind different things when you are talking about the e-lending. You can, first of all, have this lending based on licenses. And of course, e-lending based on licenses is an important part of the e-lending story. But the main topic of our report was based on the copyright flexibility, which means we try to analyze if it's possible for the library to conduct the e-lending based on permitted use, exception, and limitation in those two situations. And when it comes to this e-lending based on flexibilities, of course, you can recall something which is called controlled digital lending, which is a similar concept to our independent secure digital lending, because both of those models are based on one copy, one user mechanism. But what is very important, both are based on a totally different legal basis. When it comes to controlled digital lending, which is a US concept, is based on the fair say doctrine and the fair use doctrine, whereas our independent secure digital lending is based off the Article 6 of the Rental and Lending Directive and of Article 5(2)(c) of InfoSoc Directive. This is important difference because those different legal grounds steer us to a different reasoning and different argumentation why our model fits within the European legal landscape, contrary to what have done with this controlled digital lending. At the end, controlled digital lending is based on those two or those three important elements. So the library needs to have its own paper book, paper copy of a book. Then library can digitalize this book by themselves using digital equipment which the library possess or can use someone else help to do that. Then library is able to lend those books based on one copy, one user model. So if I have one copy of a paper book, I can lend at the same time only one electronic version of that book, which also means that during those electronic lending process, I cannot use this paper book to lend it to another people. And of course, to do that, you need to have some kind of DRM protection, which secures that during the lending process, only one person is able to, one patron is only able to read that book, and on the other hand, that after this particular period of time, this book will no longer be available to this particular patron. And of course, this secure digital lending, as you can see here, is quite put in detail. I just want to concentrate on two elements of this model. So first of all, the important impulse for us to create this independent secure digital lending model was, of course, VOB ruling. This was a judgment by the European Court of Justice, which changed the perception of the European law. Because before this judgment, the mainstream understanding from the legal scholar was like that e-lending in general is not possible when it is based on exceptions and limitations. But after this ruling, now we understand that Court of Justice says that when it comes to e-lending of ebooks by the libraries, it is possible to be done by them based on those derogations. And of course, in this VOB scenario, Court of Justice developed those criteria which need to be fulfilled to conduct this particular way of lending books. But and one of those conditions is this one user, one book ratio. But there is two important things which this judgment left. So from where a library can get a particular copy of a book to conduct this secure digital lending process. And of course, one answer for this question is that the library can get this ebook to conduct secure digital lending when it takes the ebook from the publisher. Technically, it's possible if the publisher gives you an ebook which is not secure by the technological TDM technological protection against multiplication, and when in particular license of this particular ebook there are no criteria which blocks e-lending by the library, of course library can conduct this e-lending model, which we call dependent secure digital lending, which means that library can get ebook from the publisher, and if there is no restriction of usage of this ebook, of course library can conduct this lending. But in practical terms, we figure it out, and it is a well-known phenomena, that publishers do not serve this kind of ebooks for the libraries. In most case scenario, either in license conditions or in technological element of the ebook, there are elements which prevents libraries from serving e-lending to their patrons. And that's why we've tried to figure it out if there are any good reasons in the European law that library can have a right to digitalize paper books which they bought on the market for the purpose of e-lending. And the biggest part of our report is exactly devoted to this element, because we've tried to figure it out if there are legal bases to do it. And of course, we figured out that this is possible. On one hand, we have this VOB ruling, which I mentioned you before, but what is more important, we also have a Darmstadt ruling. It was a previous case of the European Court of Justice, which was dedicated solely to something which you probably know, which is called those dedicated terminals. But during this process, Court of Justice state that if the library has a right to put books and display books via those dedicated terminals, it is obvious that the library needs to have a right to digitalize books to fulfill this aim. Otherwise, because if the library does not have a right to digitalize books, to use this exception for usage books on the terminals, it means that this exception for terminal usage will be the empty exception, because library would not be able to put anything to those terminals. And based on the reasoning which was presented in the Darmstadt case, we try to show that the same story is when it comes to e-lending. If the European Court of Justice stated that e-lending is possible based on the VOB ruling, it also means that the library need to have the right to digitalize books for the purpose of the e-lending. And this way of reasoning was not our own solely, but the same way of thinking was presented by the Professor Maciej Szpunar, who acted as an advocate general in the VOB case, when he stated again exactly that, that European law provides specific exemption for digitalization, and this is Article 5.2c of InfoSoc Directive. And if this exception is implemented in national country law, then library can rely on this exception and combine this exception with the derogation for the lending. Then it is possible to provide this kind of service. At the end, we've tried to assess all the countries from the European from the Europe, as you can see, and we try to assess in which countries it is more possible or easier to introduce this e-lending based on our model within the framework of their current law regulation, and we try to make this kind of comparison. But at the end, from our perspective, in most of those countries, it is possible to interpret the law according to our model. Why is it so? First of all, because European Court of Justice also told us that when you interpreting your law, you not only need to have in mind the rights of the right holders, which is obvious, but also you need to secure fundamental rights of patrons of the libraries, of the user of the libraries. So you cannot forget that we have other fundamental rights like a freedom of speech, freedom to rights to culture, right to education, which are the fundamental rights. So during the process of interpretation of your national law, you also need to take those elements into account. At the end, in most case scenario, from our perspective, it's possible to interpret the local national law within the framework which we provide. One important exception is Slovakia, because this is the only country, as we understand, in which in general lending is not based on exception and limitation, this derogation which is provided in rental and lending directive, but solely on contracts with CMOs. So there is a different mechanism which allows libraries to provide lending in general, but and that's why our model will not be able to fit easily with this mechanism. But on the other side, but in other cases, I think there is a lot of possibilities, especially when you take into account this human law perspective. So this is a very brief summary of finding of our report, and now I can give the voice to our other presenters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Konrad. I give the floor to Silvana for the Italian report results.
Thanks. Good morning, all. This is Silvana Mangiaracina, and together with Deborah De Angelis, we will present the results of the survey among Italian libraries. And the project, the SDL project, has been carried out by the CLAKP group research, which is the Copyright Law and Access to Knowledge Policies Group, headed by National Research Council of Italy. Okay, thanks. The context we have carried out the survey is the Italian legislation on copyright, which provides a series of exceptions and limitations from which libraries benefit in carrying out their institutional function of sharing and providing access to knowledge for the community. However, this regulation does not provide specific exceptions and limitations specifically for SDL. On the contrary, the Italian law mainly refer exclusively to the work in its printed version. So library, therefore, cannot rely on an explicit national regulation to lend digitized printed books, and consequently, they navigate in an uncertain environment. A legislative amendment would be necessary to explicitly authorize digitization for SDL purposes. So the survey aims to investigate the potential application of SDL in Italy to assess whether libraries in this context can provide the services which they are called to provide. So the survey was addressed to the overall community of Italian libraries. We used the directory of Italian library, which is managed by the Institute of Catalogo Unico, ICU. And the survey was open for 1 month at the beginning of 2025. We invited almost 11,000 libraries with personal institutional emails, and we got 440 answers, which means we got the 4.10% of the invited libraries. So the survey is structured in 8 sections. I will show you the results about the library's profile and digital lending attitude, and then Deborah will continue to explain the results about the barriers. So the profile of respondents, the public libraries are most represented with a share of 56%, followed by academic libraries, 20%. We have some school, national, and other kind of libraries. Academic libraries, although fewer, they are 89 in numbers, they represent almost 7% of the total number of academic libraries. So they appear more engaged with the SDL topic. About the collections, nearly all libraries report holding monographs, 98%, while serials, multimedia, archival materials are also common in their collections. Fewer libraries, 23%, report to hold e-only resources or public domain or out of copyright materials. Library reports to have large or very large physical collections, with the majority, 62%, while almost the same percentage, 68%, report a small digital collections, so indicating a lag in digital development. And this is confirmed also by the percentage of libraries which declare to have dedicated personnel for digital services, only 25%. And the issue is more pronounced in public libraries, which have only 70% of libraries with dedicated staff, while academic libraries show a better ratio. It means 51% declare to have dedicated staff to digital services. About the digital lending attitudes, a significant portion of libraries do not currently offer digital lending services, 62%. Among those that do, the majority limit it to specific resources. Only a small minority lend their entire collection digitally. The independent secure digital lending adoption for digitizing physical works is very, very limited, less than 4%. Among those, the type of material offered for digital lending using the SDL model are public domain works, which prevails, followed by in-copyrighted works which are out of commerce, and in-copyrighted works which are on sale but only in paper format. Okay. What about the SDL demand? Only a very small percentage, a minority, 4% for that 32%, report they have a high demand for SDL. And these tend to be highly specialized institutions, serving users like remote university students, and often owning unique or hard-to-find materials. Also, moderate demand is almost 70% is linked to lack of equipment, dedicated staff, and lower availability of digital content from publishers, especially in the humanities field. The forecast for increasing the SDL demand show a certain optimism, with about 50% of libraries which say they expect a marginal increase, or a small minority, 16%, confident. We are confident on a strong increase. About the perception of the importance of offering an SDL service, I mean, the majority says that the SDL will be important, but not essential. And only a minority states that they consider very important service. So now Deborah will tell about the barriers.
Thank you, Silvana. So we listed a diverse nature of obstacle barriers that libraries can face, and other aspect involved in the implementation of the model. Besides legal barriers, because we know that for legal clarity, we need an implementation of a new rule that will allow the ISDL model. There are also a lot of other kind of obstacles, from technological infrastructure barriers, from lack of human resources, of financial resources, and risk of opposition, which could be internal or external oppositions. So about the legal barriers, in question 15, we asked if the copyright law or other kind of legislation already authorize the independent secure digital lending. And the majority of respondents don't know about this question, don't know how to reply. And in question 16, we asked how clear is the national copyright legislation, especially in the reference of the library activities. And the 49% replied they don't know. So there is also an inconsistencies in a comparative analysis of the replies to these two questions, because if you see, the 38% answer that national copyright law allows already, the Italian copyright law allows already the model, and only the 5% say no. But then if we move to question 16, only 25% replies that the national copyright law is clear to them. Why? The 26% replied that the national law is not really clear. Regarding the technological and infrastructure barriers, the fact that 1/3 of the responding libraries identify this as a major barrier underscore the need to address the infrastructural disparity among institutions. However, the significant number of libraries positioned in an intermediate level also indicate a widespread need for investment and support in acquiring suitable digitization equipment. This could involve financial aid program or share equipment initiatives at the consortium or regional level, or guidance on cost-effective digitization solutions. Also, the presence of a smaller group that sees no barrier is encouraging in a way, suggesting that some libraries are already well equipped for digitization, and this institution could serve as an earlier adopters and share their expertise and workflow with the others libraries. Regarding the risk of opposition, we asked if the library faced resistance with its own institution, staff or administration offices, or external opposition, for example, the worries about legal action from publishers. The majority, more than 50%, replied that they don't know if the library meets resistance for the ISDL implementation by internal or external barriers. The respondent, around 26%, believe indeed that the libraries are reluctant to implement ISDL because of the resistance by publisher legal actions. But only the 9% believe that there could be internal resistance. So the fear of lawsuit by publisher are higher than the internal resistance. Regarding the lack of human resources and financial barriers, in question 23, it reveals that only 6% of libraries have sufficient staff with specific copyright knowledge and ISDL expertise or access to a specialized legal counsel. Around 70% lack legal support in this area, while 21% are unsure. A small number, the 4%, selected others, often referring to university legal offices or kind of external advisors, and also a general lack of targeted expertise on these issues within the libraries merged. Regarding question 29, where we asked if the library have adequate financial resources to implement the model, the data shows major financial barriers. Around 66% report insufficient resources, only 6.3% have adequate funding, and only around 30%, minus than 30%, are unsure, they don't know, highlighting a widespread unpreparedness and also the need for a clearer budget planning. The other question that we pose. For reason of timing, I just choose one. I selected question 33 because I think it's relevant, because we asked if the model, the independent, secure digital lending model, will become in the future more relevant for libraries. And most of them reply that these we become increasingly relevant for library with minimal opposition. So the 2.9%. However, the around 35% are uncertain, indicating a need for clear communication and about the future role and benefits of ISDL. Going to the conclusion for Italy survey, I think that it's important that there is a prevailing sense of the need for a shift to adapt libraries' missions to the digital world, including the provision of ISDL model. Digital lending, specifically ISDL, is broadly seen as promising and potentially transformative, but the adoption remains limited so far, and public libraries dominate in number but lag in digital readiness, while the academic institutions do favor show higher engagement, and a striking digital divide is also evident. So I leave the floor to Daniel for the presentation of the result of the survey among the Spanish libraries. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Will you move the slide for me, or
I will.
should I share my own?
I will, Daniel.
Okay, thanks so much, Maria. And first of all, let me excuse Anna's absence. She wanted to be here, but she's not in the mood for personal and familiar reasons. Okay, so let's begin with the context. In Spain, more or less like in Poland, we have the constitution that guarantees the access to culture and knowledge through its article, and legislation do it as well with the points 37.1 and 37.2 of the property law, intellectual property law. But we have the Article 40bis that limits the scope of the application of Article 37. So between these two articles, and with the BOB rule that Konrad talked previously, I think we have to find the adjustment to fit if the ISDL should become a reality in Spain. It will have to be here in this point between this balance between these articles in the Spanish law. Okay. The survey, if you can move on the slide. Okay. The survey is a tool to identify through the responses of industry professionals the obstacle of ISDL implementation, etc., etc. Okay. We sent a total of 7,640 email addresses to cover all the Spanish libraries. We have mistaken mails, so the final number is 6,500 email addresses. And we have a response rate of 2.75%. So the total amount of responses is 179. Okay, so it's a limited scope. Figures. Profile of respondents. This, you have to keep in mind these images, these figures, because they are going to be important then in the conclusions. More than 60% of the respondents are public libraries. We're talking about the small libraries, okay, local libraries. Just 20% academic libraries. Low percentage of national libraries. This is quite disappointment for me because I expected more feedback from the national and heritage patrimonial libraries, but unfortunately they don't respond, and 60% other libraries. If we move to the next slide, this is important as well because the profiles of professionals that are responding to the survey are library technicians in 60%, library assistants 20%. Just with these two figures together, this is an 80% of the respondents that are mid-level professionals that are responding to the survey, okay, that are working in public libraries. And as well, when we talk about direction, this is the 50%, most of them are directors of public local libraries, okay? So it's not that different from library technicians, okay? Talking about the profile. Library collections and staff, quite similar to Italy, the results, with the monographs with 92%, serials 62%, multimedia 59%, and so on. The collection size, 78% of libraries have a large or very large physical collection, while 67% report a small digital collection. It's quite similar again with the Italian case. A lot of physical collections. It's normal. We expected that, and small digital collections in 67% of the cases. And the staff, less than 20% of libraries have dedicated personnel for digital services. Okay, as well expected. Digital lending, slightly more than 50% of the participating libraries do offer some type of digital lending. In contrast, 48.6% do not offer this. Of the libraries that do offer this type of services, almost 39% state that they offer digital lending for all types of resources, while 54% state that they offer digital lending for a specific type of resource. When they talk about all types of resources, I'm not sure if the respondents are understanding well what the question was about. Okay, but let's move to the next slide. Okay, digital lending. 93% of the participating libraries do not perform secure digital lending. Okay, only 6.1% of the libraries offer some kind of SDL, and this is most of all with the public domain works. Okay, so digitized work, Google Books, for instance. Well, we expected that as well. Okay. No, let's move because we are short of time. Let's move to the next one. Okay, the ISDL demand. Less than 9% of the participating libraries believe there is a high demand for SDL, secure digital lending, while 50% of the participating libraries state that there is little or no demand. Okay, it's difficult to see that there is a demand for a service that you are not giving. So if the librarians and the libraries are not aware of this modality of the secure digital lending, it's difficult to perceive it as a service that they can give. Okay, so this can explain these numbers. Regarding to the perception of the future evolution of this demand, 31.3% believe it will increase strongly. Another 29.1% foresee a marginal increase, and 17.3% believe it will remain stable. Only 1.1% thinks it will decline, while 21.3% don't know the answer. Let's move on. Okay, regarding legal barriers to implement ISDL and the legal knowledge on the subject, 24% of the respondents consider the current copyright legislation to be not at all clear regarding SDL, while 20% consider the law in this respect to be between quite and very clear. The remaining 56% are unaware of it. So the lack of knowledge in these aspects of the law is what explains not just these answers, but a lot of answers of this survey. So 80% of the respondents do not know or don't understand the law in this regard. Okay, to be clear. Technological and infrastructure barriers. You can see here there are more than 60% in the first three cases. of the respondents, 63, 60, 60 again, believe that the lack of technological, the lack of structure in digital archiving, the lack of adequate equipment is a significant obstacle to implement SDL. And the percentage of people, of the respondents that believe that they are not important factors are just 12, 7, or 11%. So, and 43% of the respondents believe that the lack of knowledge in the field is a significant obstacle. Okay, 8% believe that this factor is not an obstacle. Other opinions point to the lack of staff and qualified personnel and the lack of budget as a significant obstacle. 37% admit a lack of knowledge to give an opinion, which coincides this 37% to the 60% that we see above. Okay, risk proposition, resistance from institutions. 53% of the respondents do not know or have no opinion. 32% believe that there are no such internal barriers, and 50% believe that they do exist. Reluctant to implement ISDL because of concerns about potential legal actions from publishers or authors. 61% of respondents do not know or have no opinion. So this is a constant trend that people don't know, people don't have an opinion because they don't know about this issue. 80% don't have such a perception, and 60% do believe it is an impeding factor. Okay. Reluctant to implement ISDL because of concerns about potential technology barriers. 51% of respondents do not know or have no opinion. Again, a large percentage of people that don't know, don't answer these questions because they don't know what are we talking about. 36% do believe that the technological factor is an impediment, while 80% do not believe that this is a factor preventing the implementation of SDL. Forecast of the positioning of the publishing industry. Here, with Poland, more than 40% or more than 40% of the respondents, they do think that well, 40% do not have an opinion, but if you look at the 35% and the 14%, it's clear that nearly 40% of the respondents, they do think that publishers will act opposing to the implementation of the ISDL. In summary, the majority of respondents do not have a formed opinion on the risk of opposition to adoption the ISDL, but they do agree in expecting opposition from the publishing industry. Okay, let's go. Human resources, access to legal expertise to address copyright and ISDL related issues. 63% of the respondents state that they don't have access to legal advice in this area. 80% of respondents do not know, and 15% state that they do have this type of advice. Access to training or guidance on ISDL legal aspects. 77% of respondents state that they have not received any type of training or guidance in this area. 12% do not know if such training or guidance has been carried out in their center. And 11% state that they have had limited training. Okay. Perception of need for legal advice or training in this area. Well, these are the good news, because here 87% believe that it is necessary, and a residual percentage think the opposite. We can move to the next one. Access to technological expertise to address ISDL is quite the same as the other one. 69% of the respondents said that they do not have technological advice in this area. 17% do not know, and 9% said they do have access to technological advice and issues related to SDL. Access to training or guidance on ISDL's technological aspects, like digitized rights management, archiving system, etc. 74% of respondents said that they have not received any type of training or guidance in this area, quite the same as the anteriors. 15% said that they have had limited training, and 11% do not know if such training or guidance has been carried out in their center, maybe previous. Let's go to the, okay. Human resources, perception of need for technological advice or training in this area. Again, good news. More than 80%, 87% believe that it will be necessary. So I guess that when they have this guidance, this training, it's quite late. Okay, let's move. If you want, Maria, we can jump to the conclusions because you won't have time enough. Okay, so in our opinion, as a general conclusion, it could be thought that the fact that the most responses come from mid-level technicians, library assistants, librarians, and or directors of public libraries and only a minority from national or heritage libraries may explain the high percentage of don't know responses. This suggests a widespread lack of knowledge about the ISDL and its implications. The day-to-day work in libraries, which is more focused on internal logistical issues and the perception that the need to provide e-lending services is already partially covered by licensed systems. We have in Spain the eBiblio, may distance the average library worker from the need to acquire knowledge or even the perception of the need for the ISDL at the present time, although most foresee growing potential in the future. Conversely, the demand for more budget or training in new areas, such as this one, is unanimous within the sector. The network system of Spanish public libraries, rather than reinforcing the idea of having a matrix with more resources to implement new economic and or technological solutions among technicians and directors like digitization tools or DRM systems, seems to have a deterrent effect regarding the acquisition of new responsibilities and decision-making, which should fall to the central services of these networks. To put it short, the belonging of the libraries to a greater network, rather than give them the sense of we have a cover, a larger brother who can fix this for us, rather than this, they do they make fall the responsibility of responding of taking these decisions to the central services of this network, not to its local libraries. I don't know if I'm explaining quite well, but this is our conclusions, and it's basically this.
Thank you, Dan. Right away, passing the floor to Maja.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I think we are throwing at you lots of data at an enormous speed, so bear with us for a moment longer, because I'll try to make it a bit shorter for Poland, also looking at the time, but also because many of the things that were already mentioned by Daniel and previously by Deborah and Silvana, they're simply similar. When it comes to the context, I think so we have a law saying that the libraries are permitted to reproduce works in their collections for preservation or protection, and it's not precise whether there is no limit on the number of copies or the technology used. So our interpretation is that this could also work as a potential legal basis for digitization. Other relevant aspect is that the PLR, so public lending right remuneration, applies to lending printed works created or published in Polish, but in fact, in practice, it is being really used for physical books. I hope you bear in mind the kind of the map that Konrad showed as his final slide. So in our study, the ebook study, we positioned Poland in the second group, which was kind of okay when it comes to implementation of the ISDL model, and that was our point of departure. So when it comes to the survey, I think we got the least responses to the survey. We gathered 86 responses from different libraries, and 73% of those who reached back to us were public libraries. We had national libraries, 2 national libraries in Poland, and a small 22% representation of academic libraries. What is relevant here is that almost 70%, they said that they had no dedicated team in charge of their digital services, which is, I think, very relevant when it comes to a model that really relies on digital services in the library. When it comes to e-lending, so 62% of the libraries in question said that they do not have e-lending services, and on the question whether they use already the ISDL model, 22% replied positive. When it comes to the main barriers, So what was flagged, and I tried to group them here, of course, were the legal uncertainties, and my colleagues before flagged these. So one thing is that there is no that there is the understanding that there is no clarity in the law, but the other thing, there is simply no knowledge about the law, and there is confusion what can be done, what can be implemented in the library's work, and what can't. When it comes to the kind of more technical factors, so it was simply also back to the basics, and coming back to the point that Daniel made, it's also, in our case, the majority of the responses were coming from smaller local libraries. So, and they are still struggling with, the word that comes to mind is basic challenges. So simply lack of equipment for digitization, lack of simply management systems, or the technical protections measures, and then the competencies and skills that come into equation. And this is kind of the stopping point before even entering into discussion, or being ready to enter into discussion about e-lending. So also coming back to a point that Stephen made in his introduction, it's not only always about copyright, it's the bigger system, the bigger ecosystem that the libraries in and are simply kind of blocked by it. When it comes to the risks, and the question about the resistance, because that was within the institution, that was a question that was super interesting to us. And so 41% said no, but 48% said, I do not know. So to us, this meant a lot that this is simply not being discussed as well. That this is not a topic yet, and there is no discussion, and there is definitely space for this discussion. And in one of the following questions, when we asked about that, so the interest and the appetite for that was there. On the question around the kind of a veto from, for example, publishers or authors, we got yes from 33% of respondents, but still 52% stated, I do not know. To me, again, this means that the topic is not really alive and vivid. Further challenges and barriers linked to knowledge, skills, support, finances. We recognize that only, or we learned that only 22% of libraries who shared their insights with us had access to legal counsel, legal expert, advisor. That's very, very little. And there is not enough or very little training available to library professionals, and there is definitely space for that. As in the Spanish case, there is appetite, and there is this willingness to learn, and I think this doesn't come as a surprise, but it's a question of missing resources. And the resources, of course, came out as the final thing that 64% of our respondents who said that simply do not have adequate funding to be able to implement ISDL, and this ties, of course, so to say, nicely with the barriers that I briefly discussed just now. So when it comes to conclusions, and I'm sorry, I was super short, but looking at the time, this is a like ISDL with a potential, yes, but the whole question of e-lending, digitization, it's still a big challenge for Polish libraries, especially the big one, the small ones, obviously. And there is very little knowledge on the e-lending models, and there's definitely scope and place for awareness raising opportunities. All kinds of barriers are in place, so it's not only, again, about the law, although also as well, but it's really the whole system that needs support step by step. And the appetite for ISDL is there. I wouldn't describe it as massive and everyone wants it, but because simply that it is not being discussed. So coming back to the second point, there is very little knowledge, but when discussed, when introduced, the kind of the appetite, the understanding is growing, and there is willingness to discuss opportunities. But for this to happen, there has to be cooperation, and it's not only between libraries, but of course there is this need for bigger cooperation between all the stakeholders relevant for the implementation of ISDL. So it's also about all the IP experts supporting libraries, hopefully more of them in the future, but also tech developers who are needed to implement ISDL. And I think in brief, that was Poland.
Thank you very much, Maja. Which are the final remarks comparing the three different data coming from the report, national report? While libraries, some of the libraries share an aspiration to embrace the secure digital lending, at least the libraries that are more aware, they remain constrained by systemic barriers that limit their potential. While Spain demonstrates relatively greater advancement in digital lending adoption, followed an intermediate position by Italy, Poland, even though has the more favorable legislation, remain in an early exploratory phase. The data reveal not resistance, but hesitation, rooted in limited knowledge, as we said, skill and lack of resources. So in a way, the solution is quite clear. Meaningful progress depends on investment in legal and technical training, clearer policies, stronger institutional support, and legislative reform to align with the implementation of the principle established already, as Konrad explained before, by the Court of Justice of the European Union. So within this constraint lies a great opportunity, in any case. Invest in clear legal frameworks, sustainable fundings, and also professional capacity building and collaborative infrastructure. In this way, we can unlock ISDL model as a transformative tool to enhance access to knowledge, inclusion, and cultural preservation, and let libraries be libraries also in the digital environment. So the legal framework should be clearer, but we need to support libraries also to overcome the other nature of obstacles, which could be the future research direction. Longitudinal tracking of ISDL implementation, for example, repeating the survey over time, every 2-3 years, would allow researchers to monitor trends, identify shift in adoption, and also evaluate the impact of policy intervention if they will come. Another point is the expansion of the survey to other EU countries, for example, France, Germany, Greece, or the Netherlands, would provide a more comprehensive European picture and will enrich the comparative data set. Human capital and skill gap assessment, as we said before, targeted studies on the legal and digital competencies of library staff could, in a way, inform the design and effective training program and institutional capacity building strategies. Also, technical integration, interoperability research, exploring, for example, how IDSCL model can be integrated with existing catalogs or repositories or platform could inform the creation of shared standard. Last but not least, also social impact studies focus on research on how the model can promote equity in access to knowledge, especially for disabled or rural or socioeconomical disadvantaged users, and also could support inclusive policy development. So I want to thank you everyone for the participation, and if there are any questions, please, we are here to reply. I don't see any question. All is quite clear, I think. I don't know if Stephen wants to say something, or we can close the meeting.
I can just say very quickly that thank you so much for all the presentation. I think I really do encourage people to look both at the full report, which really brings things together very nicely, and the individual reports that's collected in there. You have the links in the chat, but this is a really helpful piece of work, and I think as Deborah has said, it points to work in a number of areas. I think we talked a lot about people not being familiar with the concept of ISDL. I guess given that the report only came out a couple of months ago, there's going to be that, but this work, the work that's been done now, provides a fantastic baseline that hopefully we can use to build on.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone.